Good afternoon, everybody. So my name's Andy Cooper. I'm the Delivery Director of Flo Group, and today we're going to talk to you about how to get the most from OTM, Oracle Transportation Management, using evolv applications from Flo Group. Evolv, it's a few aspects, but we're going to focus on data loading today, and we'll also hear from Mazda how they've used evolv data loader to help with their OTM experience. So on the webinar today, we have myself, we have Karl Thorne, our evolv product manager, and later on during the demo, we'll see a recorded video on how evolv works and how it can be used. We have Dominic Regan from Oracle, who will talk about the importance of data within OTM. And then Lara from Mazda, who will talk through exactly how Mazda are using Lara with an introduction to Mazda as well, using evolv. So some of our agenda we expect. So without further ado, for those of you that don't know Flo Group, a brief introduction to Flo Group. We are specialists in Oracle logistics products, OTM, transportation management, global trade management, and WMS. And we integrate the Oracle solutions into any environment that is required. We're headquartered in Rotterdam. There's about 160 of us around the world, from sort of top to the bottom of Europe, Finland to Spain, and extending out to India and China. And we've got a long track record in OTM and WMS especially, and that goes back to the previous products as well in both those contexts. So we see ourselves as real specialists, and we developed our evolv data set loader over the past several years to help, as we've worked with OTM over time, to help load that data into OTM. And it's an invaluable tool, and many of our customers use it in their day-to-day operations. So on that note, just a brief introduction to Flo. I will now hand over to Dominic, who will talk about the importance of data within OTM. Over to you, Dominic.
Super. Thank you very much, Andrew. And again, let me add my welcome to everyone who's joined the webinar today. As Andy said, I'm Dominic Regan. I'm the Senior Director within Oracle for our logistics applications across EMEA. And as Andy said, I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about why data is so important. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about OTM itself. I think, people, I'm sure many on the call will be familiar with OTM, with Oracle Transportation Management. It's a TMS, a transport management solution. So it does those sort of capabilities that people would expect. Orders come in that need to be moved, then uses the data about service providers, rates, to do its planning and optimization to make sure shipments get to where they need to be by the required delivery time. Provides the sort of visibility and track and trace, and then make sure at the end of the day that the carriers are paid the right amount for the services they delivered. And of course, if you're a logistics company, you also want to make sure that you charge your customers, say, for those same services. Again, we're quite fortunate with OTM that it's well recognized in the market. So this is the most recent Gartner Magic Quadrant for transportation management systems. And you can see Oracle here, well placed in the leaders quadrant. And we've been in that quadrant now for 14 years, for as long as Gartner have produced a TMS Magic Quadrant. The thing is, though, so you can have the best product in the market. You can have, say, a product that is full of capabilities. But if it doesn't have the right data, it isn't going to give you the right solution. Now, I was on a webinar recently with another of our partners, a company called Project 44. They do real-time visibility, which is something that many customers use OTM for. The co-presenter there, Christian Karst Mortensen, I thought, used a really good analogy. And the analogy he used was about sort of fuel that you put in the car. And if you choose the wrong fuel, then of course the car won't perform to the maximum of its ability. And I think that is, it's a really good analogy in terms of how systems like OTM use data. If you put poor data in, you'll get a poor result. If you make sure you focus on the quality and accuracy of the data, then you'll get the most efficient solution possible. Now, when we look at data, there are a number of factors that need to be considered, and you can see those here. Now, the top three will be familiar to people who perhaps work in the analytics area and are looking at things like corporate data lakes. And these really are sort of the 3 V's, if you like, of data. You have to look at the volume. How much data do you need to handle? Or indeed, how much data can you cope with in a given period of time? You have to look at the variety of data. And this is becoming more and more important because we're using many more sources for data in solutions like OTM these days than we did perhaps 5 or 10 years ago. Of course, you also have to look at things like the data velocity, how fast that data is growing, and whether systems can manage that velocity of data. And then there are 3 other factors we look at, and you can see those at the bottom of the screen here. The first one being veracity. So say with the data, is it actually meaningful, that data that you're capturing for the problem that you're trying to analyze? Is it still valid? The second point we see here. And is it the right data for the intended usage? And then also volatility, how quickly does data change? And again, if you think about things like real-time visibility, it changes in real time. So all of these factors have to be considered when you look at the data that you're putting into a solution like OTM. Now, as I said, one of the challenges is that the data sources are growing all the time. Of course, we do have things like real-time tracking, whether that's from integration with carriers or it's from tracking devices that are either placed on the truck or in a container or indeed on the freight itself. Increasingly, of course, we see data coming in from mobile solutions. And so you then have to look at that and how you manage that type of data. And I say, if I went back 20 years to when I started in the transportation area, visibility and the capturing of data was really, I would say, very much in its infancy. But of course now, say, we're seeing data right across the board. We're capturing it from all sorts of modes, all sorts of geographies, all sorts of devices. And so again, it just emphasizes the point that accuracy of data is key. Again, how we use data has changed over time, and you can see some examples of that here. It's not just a question of capturing data these days and presenting it to the end user. Data wants to be used as a way of driving more value. And so there are things like doing sort of what-if type planning, the network modeling type of solution. And again, if you want to have a look at the impact of changes, you want to make sure that the results that come out are going to be accurate. There's also the sharing of data across what I would call multiple tiers of the supply chain. So going back not just to your supplier and customer, but to your supplier's supplier and your customer's customer. And that takes us into areas like blockchain, where say you're looking at data that flows across multiple supply chains. And again, if you're sharing that type of data, you need to ensure that it's accurate. We're presenting information back to people in new ways. An example being the sort of intelligence assistant or chatbot, whether that's embedded on a website or whether it's through a mobile device. And again, for that type of data, you want to make sure that what you're presenting is accurate. And then also we're using data in new ways, such as through adaptive intelligence and machine learning. So we're coming up with things like predictive ETAs. And to say, if you're doing that prediction on a time of arrival, again, you want to make sure that the data that you're analyzing and putting through the machine learning engines is accurate, so you can come up with the most accurate result. So if I look at OTM, again, it is what I would call a sort of data-rich application. We use a lot of data, and I just wanted to talk about a few of those areas here, just by way of introduction to what we're then going to see with evolv. So if you think about a transportation network and the type of information that you're looking at, clearly things like locations are important. Might be your own facilities, might be your customers, might be your suppliers, might be things like customs border points. But say when you're defining the network, of course, you tend to start with the locations. Those locations can be grouped together, put them into perhaps regions. So, when you're looking at transportation, perhaps rather than just moving door to door or point to point, you want to look at how you move from perhaps the UK into another continent. How say data might flow through to Asia or through to the Americas. So you sort of group those locations into regions. Then of course you have to think about if you like, the routes that link those locations or regions together, what we would call an itinerary. An itinerary, say, describes how product, how freight can be moved from one location or one region to another. Of course, to actually move that freight, you need service providers. So within OTM, we also have to capture data about the service providers themselves, regardless of the mode or geography, but then also the rates and the services that they offer, because those are going to be used within that planning and optimization. And of course, those carriers, they use equipment. So we need to capture that type of equipment, understand what equipment different carriers have, but also then what their capacities are. So say, are they limited in terms of capacity? Do they only have certain types of equipment on perhaps certain days or certain times? Because again, when you're creating a plan, you want to make sure that you consider that data. And then there are other constraints, things like calendars. So perhaps when locations are open for receiving or for pickup, but also things like what you're using to move products. So the pallets, the cages, the containers, that type of equipment. And we pull all of this together into really what are called sort of agents. So those are listening to things that happen, things that don't happen, and things that have a time-based element to them. And we link those together in workflow. And that workflow is really sort of what drives, if you like, the solution inside of OTM. So that, as I say, you can, initiate actions to other systems or out to other parties. But again, back to the point that if the data that goes into OTM is not correct, then say, things like agents and workflow, they're not going to be running as efficiently as they could be. So that's really the message that I'd like to leave you with, that to keep solutions like OTM running efficiently, that can only be done with quality data. And quality data, of course, needs to be captured up front, and quality data needs to be maintained. And with that, I'd like to pass back to you, Andy, so then we can look at the most efficient ways of actually making sure you have quality data.
Okay, thanks, Dominic. Interesting insight into the use of data. So now we'll move to the evolv demo.
Hello, my name is Karl Thorne, and I'm the Product Manager for evolv Data Loader and the evolv Application Suite. As part of today's webinar, we would like to give you some more details about Data Loader's capabilities, including a demonstration. As we've already heard from Dominic, there are a range of data challenges that all organisations will face. This is particularly the case when you're trying to drive as much value as possible from your transportation management system, where both master data and transactional data need to be of the highest quality. A few of the challenges that we face are how to consolidate your business data sources and then import that data into your TMS system in the format and structure required. How to validate and enrich data to ensure its integrity and quality, and how to easily maintain existing master data. evolv Data Loader is the solution to your data challenges. The application has been written by Flo and is based on extensive knowledge and experience of our supply chain consultants, who really understand the data challenges that our customers face. For more than a decade, Data Loader has been in use with some of the world's most well-known brands, both in the logistics sector and beyond. Data Loader is well proven in ensuring that your Oracle Transportation and Trade Management System is only working with quality data that has been validated in accordance with your business rules and processes. Data Loader lets you take your business data in a flat file format such as a spreadsheet or in a more structured format such as an XML document and process it so that it arrives reliably in your OTM system as data that's been validated, mapped to the OTM data structure, transformed and enriched. evolv Data Loader gives your business users a simple method to load data reliably, repeatedly and efficiently into OTM, as well as review and maintain the data within OTM. We will now give a demo of using evolv Data Loader to upload rates data to OTM. We'll first look at a simple business data file containing truckload rates going from a few US cities outbound to any destination in the USA. We will then demonstrate how that data is uploaded into Data Loader and then validated and reformatted into the structure that OTM requires. Finally, we will send the data to OTM and then check the results. Here we have a simple rates file in an Excel spreadsheet. The spreadsheet was originally downloaded as a template from Data Loader and has been populated with business data. The data that you can see here are a small sample of our carriers' truckload rates, going from a few US cities outbound to any destination in the USA. You'll notice that the rates are a combination of a flat rate depending upon distance travelled, with breaks applied at certain mileages, In addition, there's a fuel surcharge by mile and an accessorial charge for any additional stops. Now we'll go to evolv Data Loader and upload that rates file via the dashboard. The next step is to process the file. This is where the validation, mapping, transformation and data enrichment takes place. I'm selecting the sheet in the spreadsheet that we want to process, the environment that we'll be validating the data against, and then sending it to. For the time being, we won't select a post-process action because we want to check the output data before it is sent. Here you can see the file processing. This is only a small file with a simple output structure, so it won't take long. Now that the file has processed, the progress bar is green, and the status is set to completed. We click the back button, where we return to the dashboard and it loads the recent activity tab. Here we can see our file, who processed it and when, where it was sent, and also we can check the data that has been generated by downloading the output files. The output files are downloaded in a zipped bundle. Here we can see the control file, and if we open it, we can see the order in which the data needs to be loaded into OTM. This is very specific and needs to be done correctly to maintain the integrity of the structure of the data. The other CSV files show the data that will be sent to OTM. Let's have a look at the rate geo cost unit break file. Here we can see the charge amounts for each unit break, in this case mileage. So these output files are an example of how Data Loader maps and transforms the business data into the structure that OTM requires. In the next step, we will see how we could send all of this data to OTM in one click. Back in Data Loader, if we selected the process file that we have just generated, we can click on Send Batch XML. This will upload our new rates data to OTM. This process reformats those CSV files that we have just seen and produces transmission XML documents that are then sent to OTM in the order specified in that control file that we looked at. Now that it's completed, we can take a look at in OTM and see our new rates. When we go and look at the rate records that we've just created in OTM via integration from Data Loader, we can see we have an entry for each lane, i.e. a source US city and a destination country. When we go and look at the Memphis rate record and look at the rate costs, we can see that they're shown as used unit breaks. Clicking on this will show us the flat rate charges for each of the various distances to destinations in the US. Let's note down the rate for 200 miles at $552. If we want to look at those accessorials for fuel and additional stops, we need to go and inspect the rate offering. In the rate offering, you can see there's a single record. Now when we open it, you can see the effective and expiration dates. Clicking the Attributes tab shows us the per stop charge at $110 US. Clicking the Accessorials tab shows us the fuel surcharge, and that's 10 cents per mile. So you've seen how we can take a flat file of business data, in this case truckload rates, and through processing that data in Data Loader, have been able to efficiently and accurately load it into OTM. We've talked a little bit about data maintenance, so let's show you how we can do that by taking an amended version of our rates file with a new lane and some changes to the charges, and process that and send it to OTM and see the changes reflected there. Let's take a look at this rates correction file. You can see that we've added a new lane from Philadelphia and changed some costs. These are all highlighted in yellow. Now we'll upload that file with the new and corrected rates into Data Loader. Once again, we'll process the file and this time we will send the data straight to the same instance of OTM. The file has now processed and the data will have been sent. Let's go back into OTM to take a look at the changes. The changes we made will affect the rate records. You can see that we now have a new lane called Philadelphia. Now, if we were to check the rate unit break for Memphis, we can see that it shows the rates have changed. And if you remember, the 200-mile charge was $552. It is now showing $480. Let's quickly check that the fuel accessorial charge has been changed as expected in the rate offering. Opening the rate offering and clicking the accessorials tab. And opening the fuel surcharge, we can see that has changed from 10 to 20 cents per mile. So we have seen how straightforward it is for your business users to insert and correct data within OTM using Data Loader. This is part of the data maintenance process. The last thing I'd like to show you is the user experience when validation fails during processing in Data Loader. The aim is to only send quality data to OTM, so we're able to set some validation rules that reflect our business rules. These are applied during the file processing in evolv. What we'll do is load a file into Data Loader that has some errors deliberately placed within it for the purpose of validation testing. Now, when I process the file, you can see that it stops processing and we get the message that it is blocked. When we get validation errors like this, evolv makes a copy of our original business data file and highlights the data that has failed validation. Your business users can review the validation errors file by downloading it from the dashboard. When we open the file, you can immediately see that there are cells highlighted in orange, and the status of some of the rows is shown as error in column A. If this was a large file, we could filter the rows so that we only see the errors. Taking a look at those errors, we can see that we have a carrier ID missing, a SCAC code missing, and that the currencies for our accessorials are showing as Canadian dollars rather than US dollars that's required. This is all highlighted to the user through customizable error messages so that you can be clear about what is wrong and how it can be corrected. It would now be a simple matter of making the corrections to the data, uploading back to Data Loader and reprocessing the file. You have now seen how evolv Data Loader allows your organisation to reliably upload business data to OTM that's been checked for quality and integrity. Data Loader also provides a consistent process for data management and separates the responsibilities between your business users and your data specialists.
Okay, so thank you for that video. Hopefully the audience found it interesting. Now moving on to the next part of our presentation, where Lara from Mazda will talk a little bit about Mazda and then about how OTM has been used there and also how evolv has helped support the management of master data. So first of all, Lara, thank you for joining us today. First thing, really, maybe a bit of introduction to yourself and Mazda for people who aren't aware of the products and offerings Mazda has, and then we can move on to sort of OTM and the use of evolv.
Okay, sure. Good afternoon. So as Andy said, I am Lara de Mattia, and I have been with Mazda for about 6 years now. I cover the operational side of the carrier selections at Mazda, as well as the carrier setup and maintenance in OTM. We are an independent Japanese car manufacturer with the headquarters in Hiroshima, Japan. Our main production is still in Hiroshima, but we also do have production in Thailand, China, and Mexico, which is also delivering cars to Europe. We sell our cars in more than 130 countries. And just to give you an idea of where we are selling our volumes, the biggest volumes are sold in North America. And as you can see, China and Japan are more or less in line. The sales volume of the other markets are represented by Australia and the Asian countries. When we have a look at our car models, you can see that Mazda wants to deliver attractive cars that are fun to drive for the customer. So Mazda's design is actually based on a less is more aesthetic, focusing on the simple forms and shapes of the car. From 2019, Sky Active X has been included in our new generation models, the Mazda 3 and the Mazda CX-30, which you can see on screen. Sky Active X is actually an innovative internal combustion engine that combines the performance of a gasoline engine with the fuel efficiency, the torque, and the response of a diesel. In response to the global growing SUV market, we added the CX-30, a new crossover SUV, as a new car model or a new core model actually, to our production line, which also won the Red Dot Award Product Design 2020 in Germany. Moving on to our first mass production EV, the MX-30, which began production in May 2020. The concept of this car is to focus on a deeper bond between the driver and the car, and it also adopts Mazda's new electric drive technology, the e-Sky Active.
Okay, thank you, Lara, for interesting introduction to Mazda's vehicles. But now more to the topic of the webinar itself, Mazda Logistics. So maybe a little bit of background on Mazda Logistics, and then we can move on to OTM.
Yeah, okay, so on this picture, you can see our warehouse in Willebroek, which is about 50,000 square meters. And we do have 62,000 different parts in stock with a fill rate of 95%. So 95% of the parts that the dealer orders today, he can get directly from the shelves in Willebroek. We are the back office for IT and accounting for Europe. And from Willebroek, we do the parts supply and the vehicle logistics. So we implemented OTM for the spare parts business and not for the vehicle logistics. When we have a look at the map, we can see that all the countries in yellow, they are served directly by EMEA. So we actually pick and pack on dealer level. Most of the setup is done with fixed contracts, fixed carriers, and so we do have fixed departure schedules. We do have RDCs in Austria, in Spain, and in the UK, which we supply daily with stock, and they deliver to the surrounding countries. And to give you an idea of what the lead times are, so the green part is covered in less than 24 hours, and the yellow countries, they receive their parts within 48 hours.
Okay, thank you, Lara. Now, some sort of questions around OTM. So, first of all, how long have you been using OTM? When did the project start, and so on?
Yeah, so we implemented the OTM about 7 years ago with the Flo Group, and as already mentioned, just for our spare parts business.
Okay, and then as part of that initial project, you started with evolv then, I believe, as well, yes?
Yeah, so as we were implementing OTM, Mazda was looking for a way to maintain and upload the rates in OTM without actually needing the assistance of IT. So at that point, we couldn't do that in OTM. So that is why we actually choose to integrate evolv simultaneously with OTM, just to have a tool that the end user himself can do the rate management.
And you're still using evolv. How are you using it today, I believe?
Yeah, so evolv is still used to upload and maintain our outbound rates manually in OTM, as well as for our mass upload for the accessorial cost, which in Mazda's case is the fuel surcharge on a monthly basis. Due to the flexibility of the templates, we are still using the templates that were once implemented. So over the years, we of course had a lot of carrier changes, and whenever there is a carrier change, there might as well be a change in cost calculation. But I have seen it especially over the past year that I had to implement some rates that were not defined as the Mazda standard in our company. So Mazda can actually use a lot of different rate setups and been creative with the templates from evolv.
Just to sort of conclude on that, how you're using it today, the sort of volumes you're putting through evolv at the moment, how often, how frequently you're using it, and how much data is going through it?
At this point, we do have about 300 active rates in OTM, I would say. So for the line haul and distribution, line haul meaning trucks leaving EMEA and going to the hubs of the carriers, and the rest would be the distribution. So whenever our parts leave the carrier's hub, we usually do have a fixed contract of 3 years with predefined rates, which allow us to upload them for the entire period. But we have to keep in mind that every year there is a slight adjustment to the rates, but we do upload them proactively to make sure that we always have an active rate card, which is really important for our self-billing in OTM. And as I mentioned earlier, we also do a mass upload at the beginning of the month for the fuel surcharge. So those are monthly uploads. And it's really important to have the data in OTM at the beginning of every month. Otherwise, operations really has a lot of extra work at the end of the month to recalculate their costs and their invoicing costs to the carriers.
Okay, thanks, Lara. So that's sort of how you're using evolv and how you have used it. Where do you sort of see the benefits you get from using evolv then? I mean, what's the operational benefits you've achieved from evolv?
I would say that there are a number of benefits for Mazda. So we can actually reduce time by uploads the data in a structured way. Due to the predefined data templates, operations can handle the data upload themselves, which results in an overall time, which reduces the overall time spent on our data maintenance. To give you an idea, at this point, we do use evolv for our outbound department, but not yet for the import department. And whenever the rate changes, and this will be usually every 2 years, IT has a lot of work to set them up. And we are also able to minimize the errors because of the automated data validation tool, which is really an extra control function, so we can guarantee the quality of our rates.
Okay, thank you. So for those maybe some people on the call aren't so familiar with OTM. So the data quality improves the OTM experience in summary in sort of the 2 key areas I think you've mentioned.
Yeah, so at the end of the month, OTM runs our consolidated invoice for all of our carriers. So with the correct rates, you optimize actually your cost calculation in OTM and automatically reduce the errors in invoicing.
Great. Thank you. So that's sort of a little bit of history there on OTM and evolv and everything, but obviously it's been quite a year for everybody. Just the changes that COVID has brought, anything there that sort of might be of interest and relevance here, because it's been a challenge for everybody.
Yeah, so in a changing environment, we sometimes need to react really quickly. So as you mentioned, for example, the COVID-19 outbreak from last year, it for sure had some impact on our carrier rates. So for some carriers, we needed to have another way of calculating the cost at the end of the month. And with the help of the evolv templates we use and some minor changes in OTM, we can actually upload and implement everything before the end of the month. So we have everything in OTM for our self-billing. Otherwise, we would have a lot of additional work to do things manually.
Okay, thank you. So interesting that evolv's been able to help with some of the changes that have happened in the last 12 months. Okay, so thanks for going through that story. And one last question, would you actually recommend the use of evolv to other OTM users?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very stable product and fully integrated with OTM. I might have to elaborate a little bit on that. So it was about 3 years ago that our company was implementing an approval process to have a report for our auditing on who is uploading and approving the data. So the goal was that the rates that are uploaded through evolv into OTM, they needed to be approved by management. So we partnered up with Flo, and they made some changes to our data templates and trigger a few agents in OTM. So the result is actually that we have a read-only view of the rates, and they can't be edited manually in OTM. So before there is any calculation, our rates need to be approved by the higher management. So that's why I think evolv is really efficiently intertwined with OTM.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lara. That 4I sort of authorization principle is really, really useful and important to for a lot of organizations. So really interesting information. Thanks for your time. Okay, I'll move on then to sort of a summary. So thank everybody for listening. We've covered sort of a little bit on flow. Dominic gave us an introduction to the importance of data. Then we had the evolv video that shows you how it works. And then, yeah, thanks to Lara, we've had a great real case study. So evolv itself, it's been, we've developed it over the years, and it's tightly integrated with the Oracle products. And as you've heard, it reduces administration time. And the 4I principle we introduced at Mazda is really, really important for authorizations. You can automate functions, and overall that improves accuracy and reduces costs. So evolv is a product we license, so if you would like any more information, please do not hesitate to reach out to anybody. And I think that probably brings our webinar to a close. Unless there's anything else from anybody, I would really like to thank you for listening today and hope you found it interesting. And have a good rest of the day.